I'm the co-author of an international best-selling book called Age of Discovery. I've been a fellow of the Oxford Martin School and now the Oxford Science Business School. I've got a PhD in Chinese politics. I've founded a couple of tech startups. And I'm also the founder of New Geo, the New Geographical Society, which is a global society for original thinkers, people who strive to see the world in new ways. And that's what I'm working hardest on at the moment. Age of Discovery was all about making sense of the time that we live in, and Brexit, a populist in the White House, a global pandemic. These are all things in that book that I said we need to start thinking about. We need to start expecting that an age of discovery is a contest for the future, just when the stakes are highest. And it feels like, wow, it has been exactly that these past 5 years. So that's been my learning, that I think we really need to double down on original thinking, just to help try to bring forth a new global culture of exploration, because to get to a better future, we all have essential discoveries we need to make, and we have to make them. And so I'm working hard to basically help people to amplify their original thinking, to see more new things faster. Remember about 15 years ago, Tom Friedman taught us that the world is flat. And now it feels like to me, the world is wide. We need to build these wide alliances of learning and action to get anything worth doing done, it seems, like to drive outcomes through these complex adaptive systems that we now all live in. So, what have I been doing? Well, at the personal level, I've been working hard to build New Geo, to build this global community of original thinkers who help one another and challenge one another to brave new ways with research and content, small and big events that teach people the power of convening. And at the organizational level, I've really been working hard with my clients to activate their, call it their second brain, right? The collective intelligence of them, plus their clients and stakeholders and society. And the honest truth I've learned is that, we suck at it. We are so good at collaborating within our organizations, and we are so bad at collaborating across organizations or across sectors. We all talk ecosystems now, but we still act silos. So I'm working with some very large corporates to really experiment with, okay, so how do we change that? And what are the spaces and the technologies and the behaviors that we need to develop to actually do that? That's what I've been working on lately. So, first let me say, one of the big mismatches with how we think about the future tends to be that we think a lot about technology, and then we think very little about everything else. And I think one of the lessons of the past 10 years really should have been for all of us that everything else has shaped a lot of the future that we are now living in. And so we should talk about technology when we look forward to the next 10 years, but we should also talk about, mass migration due to climate change, a new movement in the advanced economies to rehumanize work and what that might be. And we should also talk a lot more about China. That's another giant mismatch right now that I see, the growing importance of China to everything and the shrinking number of bridges we have. I worked in Beijing for the Boston Consulting Group, right smack dab in the middle of the global financial crisis. And, wow, the past 10 years or more, they have completely obliterated China's respect for Western institutions and ingenuity. And these next 10 years, China already has its own solutions lined up for the biggest challenges of the 2020s, how to regulate media, privacy, AI, how to fight climate change, how to rein in wealth inequality, like every big challenge of this decade. China has a bold answer. And those answers are going to be a lot more influential than they were in the 2010s. And I don't think we quite get that yet. We are not the center anymore. And I'm not saying China is, but we are not. And who's ready for that? And for many of us, the answer is not me. We still have this kind of monolithic, monochrome view of China. All we see is red. I actually titled my doctoral thesis Blue, China's Other Color, because we need to come at China with an original mind fast. And for me, that's a big focus for the international scene over the next 10 years. I mean, first, organizations are people. And so probably part of the answer is we need to figure out how to soften that distinction between those two things. I mean, yes, organizations do have a logic and a life all their own, but one of the takeaways from the pandemic has got to be that just following only the organization's logics to coordinate productive effort, that does not always lead to the most productive outcomes. I mean, we've just found a lot of ways to create more value for the business, for society, by giving that people dimension more say, more autonomy over how work happens. So, maybe I'll be provocative and say, I think the best way for people and organizations to get on the same page and the same pace for change is for more leaders to stand up in front of their people and declare, I don't know, right? I don't know what direction to lead us in. I ran a 2-day workshop for a large insurance group a while back, and we did this virtual fireside chat, me and the CEO, and I prepped him beforehand that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk about what he didn't know, and it's going to take courage, and we did it. And it was heavy stuff, right? I mean, they've had a decade of strong growth, and then suddenly their business is full of all these new uncertainties. So we talked about his doubts, his questions, the stuff that he hasn't figured out, but he fears is really important. And immediately afterwards, after he had done our conversation, I turned to his audience, well, the virtual audience, and we did this anonymous poll. And I asked them all, so how did that make you feel? Right? When your CEO, let's call him Peter, when Peter says to you, I don't know. And the number one answer was reassured. People were reassured by that. That's how you build resilience. That's how you build a strong sense of shared purpose in an organization. That's how you kind of give everybody permission across the organization to take their own actions. And I think that's how you bring kind of people and organizations back on the same pace for change. Right. So what's the secret? Well, so history definitely helps, right? History is a great way to get perspective on global events, the stuff that's happening everywhere. So it's hard to step back and see it at a distance. So history is that distance we need during periods of global change, like now. But learning from history is just one version of my more general approach, which is we got to look at the margins. We got to look at the boundary. You take any map, take any model, and it's the edges that are the most interesting. And why? Because that's where you see all the assumptions, all the decisions about what matters and what doesn't, what goes in the map and what gets excluded. So history is the edge of our temporal awareness, right? That the time horizon that we ordinarily care about is so short term that we struggle to see as real anything that happened 10 years ago or 10 years from now. Diversity is another edge. Stakeholders are another edge. New hires, indigenous ways of knowing, the weird sciences. There's a saying that when the going gets weird, the weird turn professional. And that's exactly right, because on the edge, that's where you find not all of the future, but a lot of the future. So that's where I go looking. Oh, what's next? Well, as I say, the world is wide, and more people get this now. More and more great work is happening, people and groups all over the world, about how to help us to function laterally, to go wide. So what's next for me is to do all I can to help make this lateral shift as visible and as strong as possible. By stoking just this global urge to explore, from within, from without, past and future, every direction. People are getting these signals to hear the call to explore and to answer that call. I'm learning we got to create and defend the spaces where we can answer that call, where we can meet one another as explorers, not to conquer, but to really learn from each other. It is a vital, vanishing habitat for collective intelligence. And so I'm working hard to create that space in my research and writing, through keynotes and events and conferences, festivals, and with new technology tools and platforms. And finally, the next thing for me is helping leaders to lead as explorers. What does it mean to lead while lost? And we can all think about that question and realize, it means something very different from what leaders typically do today. But leading while lost, that's the kind of leadership that we need to help us find new worlds. And that's the kind of leader that I want to help people to become. And so I'm putting a lot of energy into doing that with people who are ready to work on that.